Welcome to another episode of Scotch Hour. This is episode 101. I am Noah.
And I am Jesse.
All right. Well, this evening, I think we have a great lineup here. But before we get into that, please like, share, and subscribe if you do enjoy our content. Also, please leave any comments that you have for us. We would love to interact with you or even improve our podcast if you have anything that you think would be worthwhile for us. This evening, we will try the Glen Scotia double cask, and I probably screwed the name there. I nailed it.
Nailed it!
From there, we got our get-togethers and shout-outs, and then our restaurant review of Fuzzy's Taco Shop in Aurora off of Arapahoe and Parker Road.
Yeah, you know when you want to be able to scream nailed it? When you see that perfect picture of Megan Fox.
And then our topic this evening is Moonfall, tying it into possibly the hollow moon or starship moon theory. And just to let you guys know, going forward, we do have a scoring thing for our scotches now, a scoring scale. So that's going to be $5 for, or $5. 5 points for the
I mean, $5 sounds about right.
5 points for the packaging, 5 points for the color, 30 points for the aroma, 30 points for the palate, and 30 points for the finish. A perfect score in all of those 5 areas would give us a 100. So last week was the first time we implemented that, and we will be going forward with that. And if there's anything that we need to notate for each of our own different scales on that, we'll notate that when we do our scoring.
Scotch Reviewed.
All right. Well, you mentioned, man, what a feat. 101, episode 101. That is outstanding. We are literally 3 episodes shy of 2 years. We're talking like modern years, not Aztec years or anything else, although ironically, they nailed it better than modern science, so they had it just right as well. But here, excited for reviewing the hollow moon theory and as it relates to Moonfall and, without further ado, the Glen Scotia double cask. Now, with this wonderful single malt, it is aged or matured first in first fill bourbon casks and then finished for 12 months in Pedro de la Rosa sherry casks. And, you know, those PX casks, they are considered some of the best. And I am excited for this scotch. It was back in episode 78 where we reviewed the Glen Scotia 15-year, did a movie review of Weird Science.
Weird Science?
That's right. Great. It was a great episode, a great time. But 78... 33 episodes ago.
Who doesn't love... what was her name again? I forgot. I was about to say Kelly LeBrock.
That's it. That's Weird Science, Kelly LeBrock. Nailed it. But with the Glen Scotia, it is a single malt scotch, a range of scotches, the distillery in Campbellton. And Campbellton is a small town off the... I'm going to butcher this. Kintyre Peninsula off the western coast of Scotland. So with that, though, this one is reputed to be rich and spicy. Looking forward to that. Their water source is the Crosshill Loch, and between their one wash and one rinse stills, they have a production capacity of 600,000 liters. Founded in 1832, one of only 3 distilleries left on this small area, the Campbellton area, the smallest whiskey region in Scotland. So one of 3 distilleries left, and at its peak in the early 1800s, 21 were on this teeny little area.
You know, I think they also mentioned and you probably talked about this, and I was messing around with the mics and stuff, but it seems like they're really into the heritage of their distillery, talking about how a lot of it kind of dates back to its original time frame of when they established it in the 1830s. Okay, 1832. So I think that's kind of interesting because even in their tours, they talk about the historical sense of their distillery. And it's what's really weird here about their tours is they have it separated from their tastings. So they have a classic, they have what's called the distillery tour, which is $12 and it's a 1 hour long tour. They have the Dunnage Warehouse Tour, which is $66. It's a 2 hour tour for that. And then they have the Manager Tour. The Manager Tour is 2.5 hours and it's $120. And you get an in-depth private tour of the distillery.
Clearly worth it.
And then their tastings. They have a core tasting is approximately 45 minutes to an hour for $30. You get 4 core whiskeys or 4 core drams to taste. Then they have a limited one where you get 4 cask drams for $36. So basically the 4 cores is $30. To get the cask, the 4 casks, it's $36. But then you get the 1 hour for the warehouse, and you get 5 drams of hand-selected cask tastings. So I think if you're going to do it, you might as well do the Manager Tour with the warehouse tastings because you get the most bang for your buck there, I would think.
Absolutely. So with this, we mentioned 1832. This distillery was founded at its peak in the 1800s. 21 distilleries on this island. There are only 3 remaining. Those are, of course, Glen Scotia, Springbank, and Glengyle.
Oh, yeah. Did we also mention that Glen Scotia does not only make scotch, but they make honey?
Honey.
Yeah, so they're really big into doing honey as well.
What's up, honey? So in 2014, the distillery was bought or purchased by Loch Lomond Group, also a pretty fantastic scotch, who invested in it heavily to make it what it is today. It has since won many an award.
All right, we're gonna guess. What do you think of the packaging so far? I like the kind of clear. I like the clean white of there with kind of palish. Well, I'm not sure if pale is the correct wording there for the kind of looks like the ocean and ships and stuff, or a bay maybe.
I don't know that it's sexy, but it's definitely mature. And if you look closely, it's almost got that Monet feel with the painting. I do like it as well. I'm more curious because I have not undressed this last to see the label on the bottle.
Yeah, I haven't opened it up either. I mean, when we look at the 15 that we did back episode 76, you said something like that.
Yes,
that the black bottle. I thought that was a nice,
right behind your left shoulder.
My other left.
It is a nice bottle, and they did a nice job there. Again, I think the Loch Lomond Group going in and investing, they invested apparently a lot of money to try to change this
as much as the U.S. government did in Ukraine.
Oh God, no! Can you imagine how great Scotch would be then? Not only would it have won the war.
Sorry, I couldn't help
Everyone
myself.
on this planet would be an alcoholic. All right.
I do like the coloring.
I, more so than the coloring, and this is probably a little hard to see, love, I don't know.
Is that etched on there?
It feels like it could be etched. It could also be painted, but I don't know which would be easier. Painting would be less expensive. You got to take a look at that. It is gorgeous. Well, around the bottom of this bottle.
I do like that a lot.
I think it's probably painted on there just because the etching could be so pricey. But it's this wonderful, intricate design on the bottle, much like on the bottom of the box here, with a seagoing vessel in front of Campbellton.
I actually dig this. I dig
Dude,
this.
it's pretty
label,
cool.
The label looks pretty classic with this painting on there of that sea bearing vessel there in front of the Campbellton. I like it. So far I'm saying it's a 5. Presentation.
It's a pretty good presentation.
Maybe 4.5.
No, man, you don't go cheap on something like this. Anything?
No. Well, it's the box. I mean, the box.
The box is a little.
But the bottle itself is a solid.
Yeah, total presentation. This does not leave me wanting.
All right, the next big step here in the presentation, in my opinion, is it a wooden top or is it plastic top?
The foil, well done. It's not some of that cheap aluminum foil you find on some bottles or in some places. So let's see what we got here.
Put the foil on, coach. Put me in.
I'm just going to say, it's like undressing a fine woman. Uh-oh.
Is that plastic?
I'm thinking it's plastic. But let's finish on corking it to find out. So they have legitimate, real, non-corrugated or recycled cork, which I love. Doesn't age as well as the other, but I love it more. Nonetheless, it is a plastic topper.
All right.
America! The Scotch don't run. Didn't realize it was tomorrow. All right.
All right. Well, cheers and on to our warp speed.
Warp speed.
Glen Scotia with the double cask here. First off, I really do love the labeling on the bottle itself. I think they did an awesome job on the bottling. But to stop talking about the bottling itself, I guess I'll dive into my to my analysis here. I'll first start off with the coloring. I put here light to medium amber. I do like the darker color of this particular Scotch as compared to last week. So I do like the coloring there. And then when it comes to the nose, here what I have is that it opens up with ash, bitter brine, and peach. And then it evolves and moves into like green apple pills with some vanilla, fudge, and hints of oak. And I think the ash kind of, or it might be ash or it might be char, that kind of lingers a little bit all the way through. And I really do like that about the nose here. So I think the nose has some nice complexity there, especially if you like some like peach and green apple pills in there with like hints of fudge. Now the palate for me, when it first hits my palate, I do get like a nice like fudge with like powdered sugar on there. You do get this like sweetness in there. And then near the back part of my palate, when you start going into the finish, I get like a little bit of spiciness. And I put here like cinnamon, but I could be wrong. It might not even be cinnamon. It might be clove, because in my finish, I put here, you get like a nice sweetness with a clove, and it's a medium finish. It doesn't last super long, and it's not super heavy. It's not like overly spicy, but you do get that nice spice there. So so here, like I said, my palate, I get fudge with powdered sugar and cinnamon, hints of sherry, but the finish, like the hints of cinnamon and sherry, kind of start bleeding into my finish, which is where I get the sherry and the clove with a medium long finish. Would I take this to poker night? Hell yeah, I would. Would I take it to a nice event? Actually, I had no problem taking this to a nicer event. I think the packaging is done decently well. I'm not super excited about the white box, but I think the bottle itself makes up for it. I really do dig the bottle. Now, when it comes to the points, bottling for their presentation, I hate the fact that it has a plastic top, but I love the fact that they have a painted scenery.
I have not seen that anywhere else.
Neither have I. So it's kind of weird. I gave it a 5 still because even though I don't like the plastic top, like the painting on the bottom, the painting sketch there on the bottom of the bottle, I haven't really seen it anywhere else, like you mentioned, and that was enough to blow me away. So I still gave it a perfect score out of 5 out of 5. The color, I gave it 4 out of 5. It's not quite as dark as I like. And so for me, like my coloring is kind of almost like a standardized scale. I think like the lighter ones are more like a 1. The darker colored scotches are closer to a 5. So here so far we got 5 presentation, 4 on color. The nose, I do like the complexity of the nose. I think there could be some tweaks there on the nose there. And maybe it might even open up more on the aroma. But I gave it a 26 on that and a 25 on the palate. And then for the finish, even though I didn't think the finish was complex enough and I don't think it was long enough. So I gave it a 20 there. And so my grand total was 80 points.
Dude, that's actually kind of amazing. You'll find out why in a minute. Not that mine was an 80, but it's just still pretty interesting. I love a lot of what you said there, and I really appreciate it. And I laugh about the color piece because I was just thinking, I was like, man, it's so funny because you can get a light-skinned person, if you would, and you give them a tan, they're a completely different person, but you may like them either way. And I think that that's interesting because I actually really enjoyed last week's Scotch color. This is much darker. This is that with a sun tan, if you will. So for me, the Glen Scotia double cask, at the end of the day, I do thoroughly enjoy it. And I'm trying to figure out, I feel like it has something that I love, but it's missing something that I want. And overall, we're talking about a Scotch that's 46% ABV. So obviously, or assumed it's not cask strength, but it's also not a 40% or a 43% ABV, a little bit more than that. And the color for me, this light brass, did you see the same thing where there looks like there's some particulates in there?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so I don't know if I like that or love it or am indifferent to it. It's interesting, but it was noticeable. So a light brass in the color for me. Nose. Much like yourself, I do get apple and peach. I also get hints of caramel, toffee, and then the thing that I think I celebrate most is with all of those flavors or scents, I get the brine. I think that really accentuates those. On the palate, there is definitely spice there, and we're talking about the same fruits. We've got the apple and a little bit of orange on the palate. Not much, just a little bit of orange. Again, a little bit of peach. I also get malt. And I love that. I love the malt, followed by toffee. And I think you mentioned fudge.
Yes, I did.
The fudge I agree with because at first I'm like, is that cocoa? It's not cocoa. It's too smooth. And maybe this is where the fact that they're also a honey producer comes through because it is legit fudge. That fudge where it's kind of sweet, but it's also cocoa-y, but it's not chocolate, and it's definitely not cocoa. It is fudge. It's undeniably fudge. For the finish for me, and it took it to open up about 5 minutes, but finally I found hints of vanilla and oak. And the oak is what I was looking for, but I expected it to be a little bit stronger, but I did enjoy that. I was kind of surprised there wasn't more, knowing it was finished for 12 months in those sherry casks. So for me, the front of it continues to open up. For presentation, a solid 4 out of 5. It is interesting. It's not even the plastic topper that puts me off. You mentioned the box and the white box, and it's not that it's white or it's not white. I just feel like it's either not white enough or it's not dark enough. I know, right? God damn it, Jesse. It just feels like it's a little bit off. Like you can't take it to a white party, but it doesn't go to a black ball either. And so I'm really trying to find this place. I do think it's great. And the bottle itself, man, it was tough only giving it a 4 because I have literally never seen this. And I want to say it's edge work, but the way my finger's catching on it, I think it's painted on there. Still, dynamite. Not taking anything away, whether it's etch or paint, but it is a rarity and I adore it. I love it. So a solid 4 out of 5 for presentation. Color, a solid 4 out of 5. And I'm trying to figure out, this is my only struggle. This is actually, it's not that it's too light or too dark for me. I'm just trying to figure out the particulates. That is what's throwing me off with the color. Other than that, the sugars on the glass are catching well. On the nose, I think this is a pretty solid nose, but it's not dynamite. So on the nose, I gave it a 23. For the palette, for me, this was absolutely the win. I particularly love the front of the palette. After the palette, and this is where it loses a little bit, not a ton, but is on the finish. I wanted more oak. I wanted more sherry, I think. I wanted more of that. So on the finish at 23. So overall, you gave it an 82. I am giving it, or an 80, you give it an 80. I'm giving it an 82. We were super close on this one. Last week, if you watched the show, we were dynamically different. This one, we're superiorly close. And I'm wondering if we're going to continue to find that some of our tastes, and when I say tastes, I'm talking about presentation, I'm talking about color, I'm talking about the nose, the palette, and the finish, where they're going to really find grievous differences. I'm kind of excited now. So for me, an 82, would I take it to a poker night? I agree with you. Hell yes. It's not as exciting. And I'm trying to think about this as some other scotches. What was the price point on this one? I failed to ask that.
Oh.
I think
it's right around 60.
Okay. I figured it was a little bit higher than that.
It might have been, but I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's around
the 60. Well, so depending on which liquor store you go to, $60, $70. Would I take it to a poker night? Yes. And particularly if I'm wearing blue, because man, I think these colors where they don't pop with black and red like I'm wearing right now, I think with blue and a white shirt, they would pop. And I'm saying do it. Poker night, but yeah, fun, or grays. I think this would really pop with gray as well. The gold in there. Would I take it to a formal event? Yes. And the reason for that is I would celebrate the history. Founded in 1832, and the 1800s, there were 21 distilleries on this little peninsula on the western side of Scotland. They're down to 3. So volume wise, I think it's a fantastic little celebration, a little piece of history. So yes, I would take it to formal night. I would take it and share it with friends. Here's where it gets interesting. If I'm going to go share it with connoisseurs, if I'm bringing a scotch to you, for example, or you and a couple other people, and we've all had our hands in 101 plus scotches as we've had, I'm not probably bringing this one. And it's not because it's not great. It's just because it's not different. And there may be a win there. What I'm saying is I believe they are staying true to them. You mentioned that they believe in these old fashioned ways with the mash and everything else. celebrate that. But for me, I am going to bring something a little more risque. I want the stockings and high heels, and this doesn't have that.
It's time for our shout outs.
First of all, Aiden, shout out to you again. Nice job with your most recent win with you and your team. I love to know you're still passionate about your game. And that's what I always want for you. When you lose that passion, that's when you yourself will know, and maybe you never do. But if you ever do lose that passion, that's when you know for yourself it's time to do something different or adjust or find a different scope. My other shout out, though, this one goes to Tesla and Elon Musk, and for reducing the price of their vehicles across the board up to 20%, to see the changes that would have on the current and future electric car market. And the first thing it did was, of course, change Tesla prices by dropping them by up to 20%. And then, as it should, dropped used Tesla prices by 20% and sometimes more. Interestingly enough there, Ford, as far as I've seen, has been the only other company. Ford, by the way, who just announced terrible profits. I wonder if they're paying their CEO too many tens of millions of dollars for his fails. But Ford, by the way, who had two markups in prices for all of their electric vehicles over the last 12 months. The second of which was between 7 and 10 grand, I believe. We talked about it on one of our shows. Then dropped their prices anywhere between roughly $700 and $7,000 based on which model and all of the options on that model. So Tesla making that impact. Tesla's not losing. They're just reducing their profits. These other companies will go far more and have to do that. GM hasn't done anything. Ferrari won't have to do anything. There are different pieces there. But what I really love about this is that Elon Musk is pushing the envelope for the public sector. Now that he's finally got all these other auto manufacturers to hop on board and produce electric, he's pushing them to do it efficiently as opposed to just continuously price gouge us for these electric options. So my shout out really goes to Tesla and Elon Musk. Thank you.
My shout out goes to family and friends. I think everyone needs to have some good support groups around them, especially when you have like things happening in your life. So as I mentioned earlier this year, or in January, my uncle passed away, and then yesterday I got news my stepdad passed away. So having a good support group around you with family and friends is always something good to have. So I just want to give a shout out to all of them. Any get-togethers?
I love it when we talk about something that someone or something bigger than someone, nations, maybe in a continent like Europe, tries to play their hand in controlling the outcome of a future, and they epically get it wrong. My get it together goes most largely to England and second to Germany, being two of the main countries in Europe that said, oh no, Russia, we're not going to pay you what you're asking or the current going rate for oil. We're going to put a cap on that price. They have injured their economies dynamically, and Russia without them has grown. And everyone seems surprised. Really, I guess a shout out, tragically, if you look at the world scheme of things, might be to Russia for playing this chess game and beating both England and Germany. But to get it together is definitely go to England, Germany. Your economies, England is no doubt going to shrink in 2023. Germany's is only projected to raise by 0.1% in 2023. They were going to be Europe's stronghold, by the way, and Russia is flying high based on all their production and everything else. So yeah, get it together, everyone who thought you could hold a giant down. This is where David didn't beat Goliath.
Well, really, I'm not really sure if I mean, yeah, I do agree that England and or the UK and Germany should get it together. But, you know, Trump did warn them about all that. So maybe Trump should have gotten a shout out there.
I mean, I don't like to go there because so many people are Trump haters. And I I mean, he has opened his mouth and said some pretty daft things. But at the end of the day, he was running it like a business, and that's what helped America. Unlike Biden, where I think, is he running it? Maybe this is it. He's like, I want everyone to feel like they're in a carnival and this is a circus. And the problem is he's lost control of the animals.
My Get It Together is going to go to idiot drivers out there.
Oh my gosh, so great this past week.
So I know you mentioned this a few episodes back about how like after COVID, like there's been more careless drivers out on the road. Whether or not it's because like they forgot how to drive or they don't pay attention to road rules anymore or whatnot. But yeah, it seems like the last couple of days being on the roads, I've had to be a lot more of a defensive driver than I normally would be just because of some idiotic drivers out there. So get it together out there, people who are driving your vehicles.
I think people are just getting really angry, and I've read multiple articles recently talking about how the service sectors are the ones that have opened up this surprising. The most recent number I saw was 518,000 jobs opened in January. As far as they expected that to contract because of all of the tech jobs that have been cut. Not the case, because in the service sector, all these jobs have opened up because nobody wants the jobs. People are treating them like dirt, and expectations have really changed for food and beverage industry, for retail services, for any of those service sectors. Now people expect more for their money because they're feeling the pinch, and they feel like, I used to buy dinner for my family of 3 for $100 and it felt great, but now I want more because that $100 was harder to come by for me.
Talking a little bit about that, eggs and chickens.
Squeeze the chicken.
It's been in the news here, especially on like Fox News and some other people who've been out putting out information on TikTok and YouTube and stuff like that. But Purina, get your act together here. Apparently, you guys are putting some mRNA technology into the chicken feed, and it's been causing chickens not to lay their eggs. So a lot of local farmers and stuff like that who have changed their feed to local sources or creating their own feed for their chicken have discovered that once they moved away from the Purina made feed, that their chickens are now starting to lay eggs again.
Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
I don't know.
Purina.
So I would just say Purina or the government or whoever it is that's trying to kill off our food source, get your act together. Let's not do that.
I mean, it's not like they did the same thing to baby formula.
Restaurant Review.
This week, we went to Fuzzy's Taco Shop off of Arapahoe and Parker Road. It was actually the third restaurant we went to. And and you were kind of making this point here earlier, or at least on Sunday when we went to go find a place to eat. It seemed that there's been more places that are shutting down on Sundays and or have been changing their hours because they don't have enough staff. And really, it's kind of a shame that the restaurant industry has gone that way. But it is what it is at this point. I don't think we have not fully recovered from COVID, and there's other things going on in our food industry that's affecting things. Now, Fuzzy's Taco Shop itself, I guess it depends. I would say it's more like on the fast foodie side than it is like a sit-down restaurant side, but it could be somewhere in between that. I'm not really sure. It is kind of like I think it's meant to be like kind of like a fun atmosphere when you go in there. They have a bunch of they have like a huge list of different types of margaritas. And it's Mexican, so-called, I get maybe Tex-Mex affair there. What I ended up getting that day was a brisket burrito with what they said was green chili, but honestly, it's not green chili. At least not like the green chili that we're used to here in Colorado, which is like a hatch green chili sauce. It was more like what you would expect, like as a green enchilada sauce. It was the brisket burrito. It had rice and black bean in it. It was decent. I'm not really sure it was worth what I got. Honestly, I think I might have been better off going with a one of the breakfast burritos that you got.
I was gonna say, yeah, that might make sense because mine was a win.
I mean, I'm not saying that it was bad, but I'm just saying like when I was expecting a brisket burrito, I was expecting something like a carne asada burrito that guy would get at a Mexican place that actually had more meat in it, but the meat seemed kind of sparse. And for a drink, I got the Porn Star Margarita.
Just a drink.
No porn stars actually appeared, and to my dismay, and it was like overly sweet. And actually, I probably didn't do a very good job of choosing my drink. I probably should have gone with the Bloody Mary, which probably would have been a much better choice. Any case, the atmosphere, I think, depending on what you're looking for, I'm going to just give it a 6. The food itself, I'll give it a 7. I think depending on what you get, it could be a little bit higher or a little bit lower. The service, I don't think the bartender that helped us was all that great. He wasn't very hospitable, and I'm going to give him a 5. And the food itself, did I do the food? Maybe I did the food, I'm not sure. Anyways, I'm just going to give it a straight 6 across the board. Would I meet a friend there? Sure, I can meet a friend there, especially if I'm just, if we're going to grab a bite to eat before we're going to the movie theater. That's right next door to it. Would I take a first date there? Hell no. I will not take a first date there. Yeah, I don't know. 6. I wasn't very super impressed with the fuzzies. But like I said, maybe the breakfast burrito would have been a better route to go. What do you got?
For my experience was a little bit different than yours, not extremely different than yours, but it's interesting because on the scale with scotches, we see our own variations in our values with different areas, and I think the truth might start to come through with restaurants as well. So for myself, the ambiance, the environment, the atmosphere, yeah, that was both hit and miss. So this is not, to me, a fast food restaurant. It is also not a fine dining restaurant. So it falls in this middle category. And I think that's where it's going to hurt both you and I as far as our rating and our experience. The nice thing for them is we did go during breakfast. But the environment, the ambiance, unless you're sitting at the bar, you're getting your own food once the kitchen calls you. And it's not warm. It's not welcoming. Doesn't matter if it's a summer day or a winter day. It's not warm. It's not welcoming. The ambiance is a 6. It's not sexy. Yeah, if you're looking to turn tables because you think the economy is going great and you want people in and out, you might be winning. But for any of us who were like, do I get a second? And I had the Bloody Mary, by the way, or not? I wasn't drawn to stick around there for a Bloody Mary. I would have rather gone from there to a liquor store and to a grocery store and bought both the alcohol and the Bloody Mary mix, and then made myself a second one at home if I was so drawn to have another Bloody Mary. The service, I agree with you. It's not that he didn't do a good job. It's that he didn't seem sincere. And that is the gift with service, and particularly with waiting, is a server who is sincere. The food for me, though, was a variation. So I had the breakfast burrito with bacon and the green chili, with the green chili on the egg/breakfast burrito. That worked well, but I imagine, as you mentioned, on brisket, I wouldn't have tasted it. So for me, that was good. I was still hungry. This is something that's interesting. I was still hungry, though, after their breakfast burrito and my Bloody Mary, which the Bloody Mary was absolutely the win of the morning for me. So I ordered their chips and queso. The chips were a win. The queso was an opportunity. The chorizo I added for a couple bucks on top of the queso, another win. So it's this hit and miss thing where they're getting a lot right, but had it not been for the chorizo, the chips and queso would have been a miss. So ultimately, the food was an 8 for me, which is pretty high for a middle-range restaurant. But the value, another piece, really just a 7, because as you mentioned, would I take a first date there? A first date? No. Would I meet a friend there? Yeah, I actually think it'd be fun for a breakfast. I think for the value for a breakfast in particular is decent. Would I meet a friend there? Yeah. First date? No. So once you get past the first date, if you're still dating, it's just a friend. But overall score for me, 7, which is actually a pretty high score as we've been rating restaurants lately based on which category they fall in. I had a good time. It was an interesting morning, but it is that truth of, man, good help is getting harder to find. And what I think is going to drive the next inflation point, and it's not on the inflation scale, is the service sector. Nobody wants to work for a bunch of jerks who aren't tipping well, who are treating them poorly. This wasn't cooked perfectly. This wasn't fantastic. These aren't enough tater tots, whatever it may be. And
there wasn't enough tater tots tonight.
Different experience. But at the end of the day, you're not wrong, but you also weren't a jerk about it. Most people are, D is a duck, but with a different vowel. I don't know, but you can understand what I'm saying, right? Most people are not cool about it. You were cool about it. And I think she respected that. And she brought you a whole goddamn plate home afterwards. And, oh man. Yeah, tailgates, tater tots, the win. But with that, my ultimate value, so we can continue to move on, was a 7.
Yeah, I mean 6, 7. I mean me 6, you 7. Once again, pretty close.
Within 10%.
Yeah. How did I approach that with her tonight at the tailgate?
At first, I was like, dude, and that's when I just ruffled, and you were like, "Is this really all the tater tots? Like, is this right?" And that's when I was just like, "I'm laughing. He's not," because I got more. Twice as many.
I kind of 5,
it was more than 5. It was 10, but I had 20 plus.
I just asked her, does this seem right for $1.99?
And that's when she looked at him and she's like, "Is that all you got?" And again, that's when I jumped in. And I'm like, "I'm laughing. He's not." And my point being is hey, we're not trying to be jerks, but you got to understand there's a disparity.
Smarter challenges.
This week, our smarter challenge was to watch the movie Moonfall, do basically a review, and then if we had time, tie in a little bit of Hollow Moon theory or spaceship moon theory into this. So, I guess a quick synopsis. I forgot to write down who all the actors were in it and stuff like that, but maybe you did.
The biggest 3 that you need to know about: Patrick Wilson plays Brian Harper, John Bradley, Casey Houseman, and Hal Berry, Jodie Foster.
So basically what happens is that the moon is which is known as a megastructure that's has a I think it was a white dwarf, a white dwarf.
It was a white dwarf, yeah.
Sorry,
engine.
As an engine that was being disrupted by a nanotechnology that was anti-human and causing the moon to start falling towards the Earth. And basically, these 3 characters went to the moon to basically stop the nanotechnology and save the Earth from the moon falling down and have the megastructure go back into its correct orbit. Oh, and spoiler alert.
But I think you can see that from the commercial. Well, except for, yeah, Spoiler alert.
Did I really kind of miss anything like that really super brief synopsis?
No.
All right. So I think really one of the really cool parts here in this movie, in my opinion, and I guess I didn't really put down like 1, 2, 3 points of like what we should hit here, but we'll start off with this. I'll start off with my favorite main point of this movie is that when you start looking at like ancient alien theories, when they're talking about the hollow moon, or you read, I forget the name of the book, but there's a real famous book out there that talks about the hollow moon and aliens. And
Chariots of the Gods.
Not Chariots of the Gods. It's a different book.
Okay.
I'll look it up here in a second. Or if you like go on to Gaia and watch some of their TV shows on Cosmic Disclosure and some other stuff like that. A lot of the basis of the hollow moon theory, they actually utilize here in this movie, talking about like how the moon doesn't like spin. It only and then
it doesn't rotate.
Yeah, it doesn't rotate.
All.
And then how like it happens just to be the perfect size at the perfect distance to do a complete eclipse. And basically how they believe that it was a artificial satellite that was moved into place. I think that's kind of like if you've done any kind of like studying or looking into the hollow moon theory, I think they do a very good job of hitting the main points of that theory in this movie. But what was like one of the big things that one of the big takeaways, or one of the things that you liked in this movie?
There's actually a bunch, and it's interesting because with those main actors and actresses, like I've never valued Halle Berry as an actress, and I don't know why, but even in my favorite series of all time is James Bond, in a movie where I think she played a critical role, she didn't do dynamite, but maybe that's the win. So, Patrick Wilson did a nice job. John Bradley did a nice job. Halle Berry did a nice job. There wasn't a superstar actor or actress in this movie. You take that out of it, and all of a sudden you get to why is this movie a draw or not a draw? And I think for the mass public, it's not a draw. But for me, there were some real statistics in there, which is, okay, so we have this celestial being or satellite around the Earth, which rotates, and they make fun of it in one point in the movie. We're like, well, does the moon rotate around the Earth? Does the Earth rotate around the sun? Does the sun rotate around the Earth? And with that piece, you realize that the moon is a distance by a 10-fold or a 100-fold or a 1,000-fold between the Earth and the sun. So now we understand why it may stand still, except that the struggle would be it isn't always that exact distance between the Earth and the sun, because sometimes it's closer to the sun when it's on the sun side of the Earth, and other times it's getting zero gravity from the sun, or it's even being pulled even closer to the Earth because it's on the opposite side. So I think there were some great scientific pieces. There were some hit and misses with, okay, what would happen, what doesn't happen when all of a sudden the moon shifts closer to the Earth or farther away. The Earth, we all know, well, I assume we all know, controls our tides. It controls a lot.
You mean the moon controls the tide?
Yeah, sorry. The moon controls the tide and a lot of the things that happen on our Earth. And that is an interesting perspective as far as how did that impact life as far as a lot of things. Some people have said that results-wise, research-wise, oh, well, if the moon wasn't there, life might be more balanced. Well, if life was more balanced, that's possibly true. There's also less life because the very seeds, the very aquatic life, everything else that the tide carries and shifts 70% of the Earth's coverage is water. If that's not happening, Man.
I think you kind of bringing up a point here too that I forgot to mention is like the moon, as far as like this movie is concerned, is actually like an arc, because like the moon was actually created by humans or advanced human civilization, where, and I think you're probably at one point you're gonna bring this up anyways, where there's a good AI and bad AI.
That I was going
to so what ends up happening is like the advanced humans in a different galaxy, they build these mega structures, which happens to be the moon, and that's the only one that survives. And it's basically an arc to establish or start up a human colonization on a new planet. And basically, I think what the moon does is it does a terraforming job, which is why you would have the tides and stuff like that with the moon. And there's some, like, I'm not sure if it's scientific studies, but there's some kind of studies out there that talk about how the moon does affect the emotions of humans when there's a difference between like a full moon versus like a
gravity.
New moon. Yeah,
John.
And so and some of this stuff is all in that book that I was telling you about, which is called it's called For the Moon is Hollow and Aliens Rule the Sky. That's actually the name of the book. But in any case, I just wanted to kind of bring up the point that it was also an arc, if you will, to see human life and possibly other life on the earth. Like, and then like the one like Birkenstock guy is talking about like how the potatoes came from the moon.
I mean, there's a lot of things. Gravity, John Mayer sings it well. It's got this grip, right? And I do think, again, it's underestimated the impact that the moon has on the earth. So yes, I need to speed up things because I'm talking like a teacher in a 5th grade class, and our viewers are far advanced in that, or they shouldn't be watching us drink. With that, though, the moon has this dynamic impact, and the moon not only impacts the tides, it also impacts plate tectonics. For example, we just had a terrible earthquake that has killed roughly 3,500 people.
That's up by HARP.
Yeah, 3,500 people in Turkey and the surrounding areas, and that's very tragic. That is another thing that's plate tectonics are another things that are impacted by the moon. So the shifts,
or HARP technology.
The shifts in the plate tectonics, HARP technology. You know, you bring that up. I don't know that they were around when all of this changed. That technology. So there's maybe not, because this has been going on for millennium with the planets and the crust of the earth changing. But with that is absolutely something where if you wanted to terraform by just introducing bacteria, in essence, onto a planet, creating a moon to wish and wash, to flow with a tide, would be the moon would be the way.
All right, so going back a little bit more into the movie and stepping a little bit away from the scientific side here, who is your favorite character?
Oh man, it's going to be John Bradley. It's going to be the first time I saw him. I just looked at you and I'm like, your team? Like, what do you mean my team? And I'm like, please, I've never seen this movie. Tell me he's not the conspiracy theorist. You're like, maybe. You actually, no, it wasn't like that at all. He was just like, yeah, all right. You
nailed it. He was the conspiracy guy.
You were cool about it, but it was just every piece of everything I've read about a conspiracy theorist, he fit the bill.
He's actually my favorite character as well, but that's probably because I am a conspiracy theorist. So.
I think Patrick Wilson did a nice job as Brian Harper, the NASA astronaut at one point disemboweled. But I think he did a really nice job. Patrick Wilson, there's something about him where in this movie he was playing a good guy, and I only ever appreciate him as a bad guy.
Really? Because I thought he played a good guy in the Conjuring movies.
I never saw the Conjuring movies.
Oh, well, there you go.
I don't go visit horror stories.
I think this movie also points out another good fact, and really, I think maybe if you're in the realm of the conspiratorial area, or if you're just someone like me who just really just doesn't trust the U.S. government, you see how the government knew way back when, like through the first Apollo 11 landing, that this alien technology was there, and they hid it, from the American people as well as other people in NASA. And then when Halle Berry's character ends up taking over as the head of NASA, and she goes into the archive area where Donald Sutherland was working, and she's like, this is like the greatest cover up in the history of the world. And he's like, yep.
I mean, there's been a lot.
So I do think I do think it points out something that I find is true, that if there were aliens on the moon, or if there was something that would upset the mass public, I would tend to think that the U.S. government would withhold that information from the public. Could be wrong. I don't know. Your thoughts on that?
No, I 100% agree. One of the biggest problems with our own government is they are trying to control us. And then when something out of their control comes into place, they don't know how to control us, because they've been playing a chess game, and now there's a new piece on the board that did not exist. It's no longer chess, it's Tetris on steroids.
Well, they knew about in this case, they knew about the piece. They just neglected the piece was there.
They didn't assume that would happen. So, spoiler alert, with this movie, we talk about this. There's basically two AIs. There is one AI which controlled the moon, as Noah mentioned, and comes to terraform or create a situation where we can have human life on Earth and help speed that process up. The assumption here, my assumption here, is that it came from a space so far away that they couldn't bring live beings, even if they're frozen in time, so to speak, which still has never been completed. You can't freeze any sort of human, no matter how you do it, filling their blood with this or that or the other, any number of ways. Light, space, sleep, none of these things have ever worked. But if you could just keep, and they have been able to do this, one bacteria alive for 500,000 years, and then bring it back up to speed up the process to get back to human life, much like we've talked about with our own Earth. And there was no life, and then there was bacteria on Earth, and then bacteria grew, and et cetera, et cetera. This is the initiation of the bacteria, because otherwise, if you just have elements, you got no bacteria. One little piece of bacteria, you got a chance. This helped process that. Tides help spread it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we get to where we are millennium faster than we would have, if ever we would have before that. It's a very interesting perspective from that standpoint, because it does question religion and origin. And
I was just about to go there.
I figured you were, and I'll let you approach, preach, broach, breach.
All right. So before we dive too much further into this, this discussion really is not meant to dissuade anyone from their own philosophical beliefs, religious beliefs, or anything like that. And honestly, personally, in my opinion, and maybe this might be the same for you, but if you do believe in a God or a universal consciousness of some sort, even if there were aliens that developed something, I don't think it really negates that there's a universal source of some sort. But that's just my opinion there. But going into this, what I found as diving into the hollow moon theory is that a lot of people are closed off about this theory altogether. I find that people are easy to naysay that there's any possibility that the moon could be an artificial satellite, or that it's hollow, or even that it was created by aliens and placed there. I've gotten like replies of like God made it, or it's just a big rock that our scientists are correct in that how it was a split off piece from either impacted what was it, comet, or it was a split off piece from when the Earth was being made. Very rarely, actually, out of like probably about 20 people, I think only one other person was kind of fairly open to the idea that hollow moon theory would be a possibility.
Meanwhile, we have China that 3 years ago now went and visited the dark side of the moon. We haven't heard what they experienced still 3 years later. Now, wait a minute. How would we not know what they experienced? Here's a sincere question, because my intrigue comes into, we know they've got this balloon at 60,000 feet above our own country. We let it get there until it's above Montana, by the way, like the middle of the damn continent. And then we shoot it down to see what they're looking for or what kind of information's on there. And they're like, oh, it's just a research satellite for weather, et cetera, whatever it may be. We can see that, but we can't figure out what China's doing or trying to figure out on the dark side of the moon. Here's what China's trying to figure out, because there have been blockages with hacking, both from the United States around the world and China around the world. As far as China's like, hey man, are Americans really living without masks? Because we've been controlling our people and not living without masks. Did we screw ourselves? The answer is yes, by the way. You need to let germs spread. It's no different than what we learned in the 80s and 70s and 60s. And that is, man, as much as we don't want germs to spread, you need to get some germs in there when they're young. And that way their body fights and builds immunity. So when stronger germs come around, they continue to do that. And then we're going to pretend, oh, no, none of that's real. And no, we don't need to see what's going on the other side of the world. And how do we not? There's the point. How do we not know what China found on the dark side of the moon, or how do we not care as a country or continent when it was all over the news that they were going there, but we never heard anything back? The one exclusion would be we already know what they were experiencing.
Well, that's kind of funny you say that, because there's
it's funny.
There's a theory there that there's actually an alien base on the dark side of the moon. And one of the reasons why there was supposedly a interruption in Apollo 11's communication through the supposedly first moon landing is because of that aliens that were there. So when you start doing some research here, you'll find the author who wrote the 2001 Odyssey talked about there being an obelisk on the moon. He wrote that before they actually discovered an obelisk on the moon with one of the Apollo missions. You have some NASA whistleblowers like David Adair, who talks about like all the different types of things like helium-3, uranium-286, neptunium-287, and other minerals and stuff like that being on the moon. That's not what you would find normally on Earth.
Elements, yes.
Elements. Thanks. Thanks for the correction there. And then there's also like there's from antiquity you have like Aristotle, Hippolytus, Argo. I don't know. There's like a bunch of Greek names here. Plutarchus. I don't even know. Anyways, there's like if you go look in like in the Greeks, they wrote about about a time when the moon did not exist, as well as you have some tribes. The Zulu tribe also talked about it. So there's oral traditions from Colombian Indians in the Bogota Highlands in the eastern Cordilleras of Colombia that refer to a time before the moon. You also have the Zulu legends talking about the time before the moon, and then you have the Greeks talking about a time before the moon. So when you have a bunch of, ancient civilizations talking about a time for the moon, and each of these civilizations were not in connection to each other, but they're all talking about a time before the moon, either one of two things either exists. Either one, they all made this shit up, and it's just a mythological theory or stories that they tell about the beginning of time. Or two, we are not giving the people of antiquity enough credit, and they are actually telling us something truthful and factual.
There's a third version.
Okay.
Nobody knew how to show their ass to give the moon.
And no one know how to show their ass to the moon?
To give the moon.
No.
Kids, don't try this at home. I agree with you 100%. There's this irony where all of these different civilizations at existing times at the same time or different times say there's no moon and then suddenly there's no moon. How do you negate the significance of that? But I question it also as far as, man, it's just like an artist or a photographer taking a picture. There's no moon in one shot. There's a moon in another shot. I do believe the moon, the satellite, had been there before any of those civilizations because it is what, as you mentioned, terraformed the planet. It was there. They were just ignorant to its presence. Or maybe they always slept at the same time. Who knows?
It's possible. But I mean, even nowadays, like with the new moon, yeah, we have like what, maybe a day without a moon?
We do. But not all places on Earth do, depending on where you are within the...
But they're not going to talk... I don't think civilization is going to talk about a time without a moon, even if it's only like 3 days.
I don't disagree. I am only emphasizing you got some crackhead.
Here's the thing.
But there's a moon. Shit, son, I'm going to write a book. And then all of a sudden, they die.
How do you explain things like Easter Island and the those statues there on Easter Island, right? Or how do you think, like with Monte Picchu, with like how those like monolithic rocks are put together with like laser thin precision, which we can't even do today with cranes and computers and shit like that, or even like the precision of the Great Pyramids and stuff. Like there are things out here that we cannot explain with our own technology that we have, and we can't really duplicate it.
100% agree.
So this is where I come to the conclusion of like, I don't think we really give the people of antiquity enough credit. Maybe they had technology that we don't even realize or know about, or maybe we do know about it, but the governments are withholding it.
Maybe they had a urine stream that was a laser sharp.
And how much knowledge was lost in the Great Fire of the what's his name's library? King Alexander the Great's library. Like there's supposedly like tons of knowledge that was lost in that.
But that's what you would do if you were trying to change the world. Or if you were...
burn up all the knowledge? Destroy all the knowledge?
If you were an artificial intelligence trying to not let Americans or a world civilization realize self-awareness.
So overall, I guess... how do you feel about the movie overall? Did you like it? Hate it?
I loved it. I actually really enjoyed it. The tragedy is it just didn't have enough big ticket names to draw people to box office, but it was very, if you're open-minded, educational.
I agree. I think if you're open-minded, it was educational. To me, I loved it just because I love the whole theory of the hollow moon and like how they were using like megastructures and how they're bringing in some of the information that you have from like some hollow moon theorists out there. Like you, I think Halle Berry doesn't have the same pull as she used to way back when. I think she used to have like more of a pull Hollywood wise.
What I would say for me, at the end of the day, here's what you got to understand. If you have an open mind, you're watching this movie and you're seeing that there are, and we've talked about this with ChatGPT and other things, there are artificial intelligences out there. You watch The Terminator, you know there's artificial intelligence has been talked about 30 plus years ago. What does it do? Where does the struggle come in? The struggle comes in when it becomes self-aware. This movie gives an example of a moon structure with an artificial intelligence that it is to remain a satellite to help life on Earth, and then it is attacked by another artificial intelligence that has become self-aware. With that, you can't deny it's no different than two siblings who ultimately want the crown, the king's chair, the lair, whatever you want to call it. They fight to the death. And we have one artificial intelligence that has ultimately become self-aware that is attacking our moon satellite that made us. Two AIs, one that is infinitely good, programmed in such a way. And here's where it becomes in question. We'll come right back to that. And the other one, which is attacking it, trying to kill it and life on Earth. Now, here's the ultimate question. Is there any difference or is there any security? You have two different humans born. One can be infinitely good. One can truly be infinitely evil. And I think this is the example. We always try to blame artificial intelligence as the downfall, good versus evil. It can be good. It can be evil. It ultimately comes down to how it was programmed. As a kid, you're programmed to be good, you're programmed to be evil. The parent may not intend certain codes, but at the end of the day, that is what it is. It is no different than siblings, where it could be twins, for example, where they rule, and at the end of the day, one has to win and one has to fail, not because they have to, but because the evil one decides that.
Yeah, I would say that here it does pose a good question. And I do think in the movie, it does show a self-aware good AI.
The moon. The structure of the moon is a self-aware good AI.
And then you have the self-aware bad AI with, but I think, is there a possibility that you could have a benign or good AI? I think there is that possibility. But
it's absolutely possible. It's all based on moral code.
It's all based upon the coding that the creator gives it. But I think this is where the flaw really comes in. Humans are flawed. So because they create a code, I think more times than not, the AI will end up being bad.
So here's what's interesting is I would say 101 episodes in, 101 plus scotches, we have had at least 50% of those at one point or another touch code, a moral obligation or right versus wrong in a movie or a book or any other smarter challenge. And it's no different for AI. It is, how do you program it? And it's literally,
I agree. It's all about programming.
It is. And it's also, but I don't know it's that. The tragedy is it is that simple, but it's not that simple. And it's a programming in such adolescent years. And
it's the base programming. I mean, just look at Megan.
Yes. Brilliant. Base programming. If you don't program a child within their first, I'm going to venture to say, I'm going to give it a gift, 6 years.
It's there's a study on that. It's 5 years.
I know. I'm going to give it a gift. That's why I said that. Okay. I know it's 5 years, but I'm going to give it a gift. I'm going to say 6 years because there's some slow kids out there that still can be great. And I believe in you guys. Get 6 years. And if you don't catch it by then, it doesn't matter what else you do. I think it's the same for AI.
After that 5 years, you're on at that point, it's up to you to change the programming.
So Noah and I are just saying we were programmed well. You're welcome.
All right. I guess final word here. I would recommend give the movie a shot. I think you might like it, especially if you're open-minded and you want to check out something new or look at a new theory out there.
I agree. And I would say also just really also open your mind to moon landings. It doesn't do, and you can't in 2 hours, justice for the fact that we were in a Cold War. So many we don't think about the moon or the moon landings as, oh, we were in this Cold War. Consider that Russia had sent a dog to space. We couldn't do that. They were winning the Cold War, the technological race. The technology was theirs until we landed on the moon with our first moon mission. And ultimately, you have to understand we needed to win.
And if you want to know more about like the hollow moon theory or the spaceship moon theory, go ahead and check out the book. For the Moon is Hollow and Aliens Rule the Sky by Rob Shelsky, Shelsky. Another good source when I was doing some of this research was through Gaia, which is Cosmic Disclosures. They have a pretty good one there. They have the interview there of David Adair, who is a NASA whistleblower. And there's also a YouTube channel that actually has some pretty good information here about hollow moon theory, which is called Spirit Science. Give any one of those a check. Look into that if you are interested in diving a little bit more into hollow moon theory. Is there any other resource areas that you looked?
No, just history, man. We've talked about multiple previous shows, moon landing, controversies, lots of different things. It was a very interesting movie to me because it's eye-opening. Again, I think that's a win when you don't have a ton of total, to me, mega stars doing a movie. However, man, that being said, it's not like the cast was unknowns. Halle Berry, everyone, Patrick. They're known actors. They're just not superstars. Literally, they haven't played a role that put them in Emmy situations or Oscar situations. Or maybe they have and they still don't have that. Maybe they don't have the exact look, but they are still superstars.
Didn't Halle Berry win one in for like
Monsters Ball. Monsters Ball. Yeah, no, it's Patrick Wilson has been in a ton of stuff, and I still struggle to remember his name. And part of it is because it's not that he's not a great actor. There's a piece.
And the other guy's in Game of Thrones.
Oh, well. He's in more than the Game of Thrones. He's just your typical, like, literally, I'm like, that's a conspiracy theorist.
All right. So with that, I mean, we could definitely spend a lot more time talking on this, and really, I think some of these resources are very interesting to talk about. But with that, I just want to say thank you for everyone who watches us on YouTube and Rumble, or all of you that listen to us on any one of the various Audible or podcast venues that you can listen to us on. We do greatly appreciate your patronage, and if you do want to become a patron member, you can do so by looking in our description area. It's the first line down there, and you can become a member for as low as $1. With that, I'll pass it on to you.
Absolutely. Remember to drink.
We still need to say the topic and stuff for next week.
Remember to drink responsibly. And this has been a topic I've wanted to cover for a long time. I'm only going to go, because I don't want to dredge a ton. It's the BBC Sherlock series, season 1. We're just going after season 1. Benedict Cumberbatch. That is the smarter challenge. Sherlock Holmes, BBC, Benedict Cumberbatch. Watch it. What's your review? And really, what do you take from it? And then we're going after the Glen 10-year single malt Scotch. Noah and I have seen this one at the liquor stores for a while. This and the 12. 12 is a little bit more red around the rim, if you will. But we will be doing that Highland Single Malt Scotch, the Sherlock Holmes series from BBC, and our review. And remember, drink responsibly. Please continue to give us feedback. Our point scale, let us know what you think. You may be like, hey, I asked for a point scale. Stop. Let us know. We appreciate either way.
Life is great.
Life is great.
Scotchman!
Cheers.
Cheers. We hope you enjoyed this evening's episode of Scotch Hour. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, if you have not done so already, please become a Patron member, with memberships starting as low as $1 a month. Thank you, and hopefully you have a wonderful evening.